What am I reading? What do I read? Why do I read? Just cracking Marcus Aurelius's Meditations as I think on what it is I'm looking to say, what it is I want to convey. And of course, anybody who's cracked this, or if you have not, Meditations is written by a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, who was a philosopher and emperor. He kept a journal that was never meant to be published, and fortunately today we are able to have access to his bits of wisdom that were part of, like I said, a bedside journal or something that he would have kept. And so in aiming to speak to the importance of reading, why I read, what I read today, I think, what can I leave you with? What's the point of this video? And I think first and foremost, reading, at least for myself, given how much distraction is available to us, has allowed me somewhere where I can put my focus somewhere in more of a long form fashion. Even if I'm listening to a long form discussion by way of a podcast, I still have the rest of the apps that are always pulling at my attention, always looking for me to remain locked. And so reading for me is kind of like a brain cardio that I would encourage of anyone. I know that in any angst I might find myself in, if I was to reflect on a day at the end of that day, I could see where I spent a lot of time in my angst, as I say, whether that's scrolling or going app to app or thinking on what should I do or what's next or how do I fill this time. I'm finding that reaching for a book rather than my phone leaves me fulfilled rather than drained. And so Meditations, all small tidbits of wisdom, of thought, all meant to provoke thought of your own. And so just on this page here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this page, somewhere in and around 6 thoughts or prompts on this other side. And so to sit down with this book and to just go through the pages, I've made it somewhere around the halfway point. I'll share this one with you that I came across before hitting go on this, and I thought it was quite cool, relevant to maybe my mission in why I'm even considering doing such a thing. And so it says, if you can, show them the better way. If you cannot, remember that this is why you have the gift of kindness. The gods too are kind to such people, and in their benevolence even help them achieve some ends, health, wealth, or fame. You can do it too, or tell me, who is stopping you? And so I love that because it just shares that if you don't quite know, well, then at least you can be kind. And if you can do it, why aren't you? And if you aren't, well, who is stopping you? Which is fitting because of some of these other books that I have, recommendations for sure, this one being one of them. Another book that I quite enjoy, again, in this pursuit of better filling my time, learning what I can, understanding what the great minds of history or even the great minds of today are doing to guarantee and ensure their success. And so that points me to this book called Tribe of Mentors. Pro tip, this is how I got through the book. I have an audiobook version of this. And so there's a couple books that I have both audio as well as the text. And what I'm actually able to do is flip back and forth between that. It's kind of like taking turns. I'll read for a bit, the audiobook will read for a bit, and that way I can really get through some pages. But so Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferris. This is a collection of feedback that Tim, the author, was able to receive from guests or connections on his podcast. It's the Tim Ferris Show is the name of his podcast. His niche is to speak to and gather from the best of the best what it is that allows them to be the best of the best. And so this book is him posing the same 10 to 12 questions to every single one of those people. And so the curation and process in which he went through in order to condense down to these perfect questions, or ones he felt were perfect, all gather incredible wisdom from they who respond to him. And so flipping through, I've just cracked it here. You can see that this is the start of one of the sections. Person by the name of Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I don't know, I'm not familiar with who that is. Love what they had to say here, just in what I read. But the people responding will either answer all the questions, some of the questions, but what you see as you go through the book is that the best and the best are all kind of doing the same thing. That the themes become very clear. Their perspective on why these themes are important become clear. They all do so much of the exact same things. And so, yes. And so this Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the cover quote of which I'll read says, "A good friend of mine once said, 'It's really easy to say what you're not. It's hard to say what you are. Anybody can talk about why something's bad. Try doing something good.'" And so that's where I was able to crack open to in presenting this book to you. I love that quote. I think it's so easy to point and nitpick. I think it's so easy for us to poke holes in things without ever having a suggestion of our own, right? We can point out what's wrong. We see this all the time. People point out what's wrong, but fail or don't even don't insist upon offering a solution, and so when things are tough, things are complex, and people are trying to do great things or manage a great deal, of course we're going to get things wrong. And so how do we get it all right? And if you have something negative to say about what's going wrong, do you have suggestion as to how that could go better? And I guess what this kind of suggests is that, yeah, that's very easy to do. And so let's try doing something good. And so, wisdom from Marcus Aurelius, wisdom from Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I gotta look that person up. And so, Tribe of Mentors. Within the book, one of the questions is, what is your most gifted book? Which is a clever question for the reason that is, what is your favorite book is kind of like picking a favorite food. It's hard to, well, I like this. I love this recent book. I always reread this book. But to say, what is your most gifted book kind of says, okay, well, you're able to actually track that. What have I given away? Why do I give that to them? And, actually, I didn't realize how often I give that out. So it makes the question a little easier to answer and shows some pretty hard evidence as to why that is one of their most meaningful books to them. And so what I found, as I said, many themes in this Tribe of Mentors book. What I found, and what is nearly unanimous within the book, is that all these high-performing people, their most gifted book is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which of course I had to then buy and read for myself. A brilliant read about Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, and stories from within his experience in Nazi death camps and surviving. This is a guy who lost his family. This is a guy who saw horrendous demonstrations of violence and persevered through terrible conditions, all to find himself a survivor and, what I would call unbroken. If you were to survive that or to witness such a thing, there's no doubt that you can come out the other side of that in all kinds of trouble despite no longer being in the camp. And so there is a section in here. Of course, I don't have the page marked. It's my favorite part of the book that describes a moment in which Viktor was called upon to address a group who, of course, didn't have much hope to hold on to and was sought for an inspirational bit of verbiage. And so it's important to note that Viktor is a psychologist, psychiatrist of sorts. I don't know his exact title, definitely a person in the psychological field. I'd have to look up exactly what his profession was, but nonetheless, he would consult people, clients. He studied, was of course a deep thinker and a very smart person in human psychology. And so it's this that allowed him to maintain good spirit in what he faced. Working hard to find this page. I know that when I skim the appropriate page, I will find it. Okay, so I've found it. Here it is on page 65. He says, "It had been a bad day. An announcement was made out. From then on, actions were going to be punished." And so they are getting way harder on these men. And so he tells a story of a prisoner stealing into the potato storage and stealing a few pounds of potatoes. What would go on would be to see that they would call upon someone to confess as to who did it, and all 2,500 men kept their mouths shut. They didn't sell out their comrade. And so this brought on more punishment. They would not feed them. And next thing you know, the light is out in their hut. And so the warden pointed to give some advice. The warden called upon Viktor to give some advice. He says, "God knows I was not in the mood to give psychological explanation or to preach any sermons. to offer my comrades a kind of medical care of their souls. I was cold and hungry, irritable and tired, but I had to make an effort to use this unique opportunity. Encouragement was now more necessary than ever. And so he's in complete darkness. The light has gone out in the tent, the hut. He talked about the future and hope for the future, spoke of many opportunities of giving life a meaning. I told my comrades who lay motionless, although occasionally a sigh could be heard, that human life, under any circumstances, never ceases to have a meaning, and that this infinite meaning of life includes suffering and dying, privation and death. I finally spoke of sacrifice. The purpose of my words was to find a full meaning in our life, then and there, in that hut, and in that practically hopeless situation. I saw my efforts had been successful. When the electric bulb flared up again, I saw the miserable figures of my friends limping towards me to thank me with tears in their eyes. But I have to confess here that only too rarely had I the inner strength to make contact with my companions in suffering, and that I must have missed many opportunities for doing so. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. That's a fascinating section of that book. I can only imagine being so out of gas himself, only to be in a situation where not only are you being worked to death, starved to death, and laying eyes to such tragic events, your people being so mistreated, and to be amongst that, yet to be a pillar of strength within that, so that when the light goes out, you can begin to share the importance of man's meaning, life's meaning, hope for tomorrow, and that despite the conditions, there is meaning to be found. And so for him to build up the courage and the spirit, although reluctantly, to be a voice of reason, be a voice of encouragement, be a fellow companion, he was able to muster up words of true encouragement that would see that when the lights turn on, men would come forward with tears in their eyes to thank him for what they must have so desperately needed in that time. And so that final line, of course, I've closed the book, that final line says, I have to confess here that only too rarely had I this inner strength to make contact with my companions in suffering, and that I must have missed so many opportunities for doing so. And so acknowledging that while it was tough and he had to find it within him to just simply offer that up, glad that he was able to do so, acknowledging the value in the connections he was making given the expertise and encouragement he was able to offer, and that I must have missed so many opportunities for doing so. And so, 3 different authors, 3 different backgrounds, 3 different forms of text, I would call it. One, a personal journal. Next, a huge collection of people's feedback, answering those questions. And then one, Viktor Frankl, who is a survivor of such dire circumstance. But, you know, at least in the first thing we read by Marcus Aurelius, you know, sharing with us the gift of kindness if we don't know, and if we do know, can we guide? And if we're not, why not? Which points us to Tribe of Mentors, who points us to Viktor, who shares similar sentiment as Marcus in the way that despite being tired and out of gas, still finding how you can show others the way. And so I think that's why I'm feeling called to share this with you. Man, the wisdom we can take from those before us, the exercise we can gain by sitting down with a book that doesn't buzz at you, interrupt you. You know, I see reading as a real tool against the distractions of which we face today, for the benefit of what we could learn from them and the good that can come of that good. And so I've accepted that I will forever be purchasing books at a higher rate that I read them. I have about a dozen books all on the go. And, you know, when I say on the go, that means that there's ones that are half bookmarked that I'll say I'm reading, but it actually hasn't been like 6 months since I cracked it. That's okay, right? If I choose to pull another one off the shelf, which I did just yesterday, that's okay too. Just the effort and mindfulness put forward to reach for the book instead of the phone, instead of the device, I think is something that can be game-changing for the individual who, hopefully, if you're anything like me, doesn't want their brain to rot at the hands of the distraction and technology that we have available to us. And so I want to share more of these insights. I want to share more about what I'm learning through my readings. I want to connect more with people about what it is they're reading, what they like to read, what their takeaways are from what they read. And yeah, so I don't know. Rainer reads Kevin's books. I don't know. A little bit of a series, I believe, to come. But yeah, first up in my book recommendations are Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, Tim Ferriss's Tribe of Mentors, and Viktor E. Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I gotta fact check that E part on the Victor. I just wonder if it's just a play on victory, which of course he achieved by surviving the Holocaust. Take care. Happy reading. Talk to you soon.